Good evening, everyone. Charlotte here from Enriching Environments, and welcome to Top Tip Tuesday on Instagram Live on Tuesday, the 5th of April. And let's wait a few moments for everyone to come on. Hi, David. Good evening. Ramadan Kareem. Hi, Ramia. Ramadan Kareem to everyone who's joining. Thank you so much for being here this evening. And the first week of Ramadan, first few days of Ramadan here in Dubai, well, all over the world. And this evening we're going to be talking about one of my favorite topics in early childhood, one of my favorite areas of child development, and that is the sensitive periods, what Montessori called the sensitive periods. So these are optimal learning opportunities, windows of opportunity for intense learning, and that is unconscious absorption, so unconscious learning in the first 6 years of life. So what do sensitive periods mean, and why? What are they? What are the sensitive periods? Hi there, everyone who's joining. What are the sensitive periods? So these are the optimal learning windows of learning during the first 6 years of life. There are 6 sensitive periods, and these are the lynchpins, the foundation of Montessori philosophy. So Dr. Montessori's philosophy, she created this philosophy on the basis of her observations of children as a scientist, as a psychologist, as an educator. This was in the early part of the last century, of the 20th century. She started her work within street children in Rome. That's where she opened her first school, called the Casa dei Bambini, which means a children's house. And the sensitive periods, so these 6 sensitive periods, which are unique to all children from all socioeconomic groups. They are universal. They're part of the universal tendencies and needs and sensitive periods, windows of opportunities for all children, all humans throughout the world. So regardless of socioeconomic group, regardless of race, regardless of culture, regardless of upbringing, whether it's a rural, hi there, whether it's a rural setting or an urban setting, whatever the type of setting and socioeconomic group or race or culture that a child grows up in, these are the universal needs of children, the universal tendencies of children. So these are the 6 sensitive periods, and they are a sensitivity to movement, these are sensitivity to repetition, to language, to order, to the social aspects of life, and to small objects. So these are dominant during the first 6 years of life. And what it means by having a sensitive period, these windows of opportunity, is that we want to offer as many opportunities for a child to have experiences of all of these limitless experiences, first-hand experiences of these sensitive periods, because these, as I say, are unique learning opportunity, windows of opportunity for learning, where the child unconsciously absorbs, unconsciously learns everything about it, about this particular sensitive period, just through absorption. Dr. Montessori called this period the absorbent mind, actually, and that's because children are learning completely unconsciously during this period. So to give you an example that will hopefully bring this to life for you. So a sensitive period for movement. That, have you observed any baby, any young child, whether or not you have children, they need to move from their earliest hours, days, weeks, months, years. They need to move. They, as a tiny newborn, once they've got past that couple of first days where they've just come out, when they've just been born and they're just out of the womb, then you see them stretching and really getting a sense of their body in space. So the need for movement is a really, really obvious one, an easy one for us to see. And then, of course, as soon as they can move, they're rolling. And then as soon as they can roll, then they're trying to crawl. And then they are going to be walking. Somewhere around the age of 1, children, most children will walk. Some children that's 10 months, some children that's 18 months. But And as you know, if you've ever had a baby, a crawling baby who wants to go somewhere, or a toddler who wants to run off somewhere, that need for movement is really, really strong, and they will really, really protest if you try and stop them from doing what they need to do, either in that moment. So that's what the sensitivity for movement is. It's an inner drive, and this is what all the sensitive periods are. So that's the example of movement. And this evening we're going to talk about the sensitivity to order. This is one of my favorite, this is my favorite sensitive period, because it's really manifested differently in my children and in quite an extreme way in my son, and it's the way that sense of order manifests in toddlers is often misconstrued, misinterpreted, is seen as our child being bratty or spoiled. People call it terrible twos, and children have tantrums, and very, very often it is because the sense of order is disrupted. The sense of order is at its peak between 18 months and 2.5 years. So it's about a year where it's at its peak. All the sensitive periods take place in the first 6 years of life, but sense of order is at its peak between 18 months and 2.5 years. It is the most easily misunderstood sensitive period, and I'm in a toddler community here in Dubai at the moment, and I'm so passionate about toddlers, and I'm so passionate about people, parents, all adults understanding toddlers and what they are really saying, what they are really meaning in their behaviour. And the sense of order is, as I say, is one that can be really, really easily misunderstood, and children can be really taken away from what their needs are if we as adults don't really understand what's going on with the child's sense of order. So let me give you an example. What is the best way of describing it? Okay, so a sense of order for a child is not the same as an adult's tidiness. For a child, external order in the environment. Hi Joe, hi everyone who's joining. External order in the environment leads to internal order inside. So that means that we have a simple, ordered and accessible space for children. So even if that's one shelf, even if that's not even a shelf, if that's a rug on the floor with a few of your children's toys laid in an ordered manner that's accessible to them, it's really, really simple, that will support their sense of order. You don't need to have fancy toys, you don't even need to have a shelf, just a rug or a towel, whatever you have, a mat on the floor with your children's, a few of your children's toys on that will support their sense of order. So that's what that looks like. Children thrive and need, particularly young children, toddlers, consistency, predictability, and routine. So that's CPR, consistency, predictability, routine. If you can think of it like that, then we can start to shape an environment with those two key things in mind, that it's simple, ordered, accessible, and that our children need consistency, predictability, and routine or rhythm. So your the predictability piece from the CPR comes from the simple, ordered, accessible environment. So, and it's consistent. The consistent piece comes from the simple, ordered, accessible environment. So our child knows that if they want to play with that particular toy, then it's there on the rug, on the mat, on the shelf, wherever you have it. And it's there in a consistent place, and they can rely that it's going to be there where they left it. How that manifests in children with a very, very strong sense of order. So this is a really, really good positive thing, and something we want to cultivate, the sense of order. As I said before, external order in the environment leads to internal order within the child. And internal order means that literally they are building these lovely neural pathways of problem solving, of reasoning, of logic. And these things don't come in till much, much later. However, all the work we do in the early years is building our foundation, growing this and nurturing this foundation for our child for the future. There's nothing that is done in the early years that is there isn't of value. It all matters. Every single thing that we do matters. Children absorb everything from us, from their environment. And that's the good bits and the less good bits. But just this simple thing of having an ordered environment goes so far to supporting our child in their sense of order, supporting them in meeting their own needs. Because if they can trust that something's in a reliable place every time, they are going to need less help from us as adults, because they can predict, they know, they have that sense of safety and security, which is really important for a young child. Sense of safety and security, that when they go back to that shelf or to that rug, wherever it's arranged, or that cupboard, it's going to be there every single time. And that the sense of safety and security all comes from the sense of order. It's really, really vital in a young child. So that's why it's important. And the incredible things that happen with the child with a really strong sense of order means that you will have a 2-year-old, if you have a child with a very strong sense of order, if you can manage to arrange your home environment in a way that's consistent, that's simple, ordered and accessible, you're going to have a 2-year-old who loves to put things back where they belong, who loves to, what we see as tidying up, but it's not, it's just creating order in the child. You're going to have a child who at 4 loves to lay out their clothes for nursery or for school the following day in a really, really, really precise way. You're going to have a child who loves tasks like cleaning, for example, because that is sequential. It's going from one thing to the next thing is in order in cleaning. For example, we say if we're wiping the floor, we might spray it and then we mop it and then we dry it. To a child with a really strong sense of order, that those type of practical life activities that are sequential and demand things to be done in a certain way are really, really, really foundational for supporting that sense of order and helping them feel safe and secure in their environment. So that is as a quick side note on that, practical life, all this what we call practical life in Montessori, but really is cleaning and housework in normal speak, as it were. These practical life is all sequential, and anything to do with sequencing is a foundation for mathematics later on. We're not doing any mathematics, any trying to read numbers or any addition or subtraction, any of that when they're little. But all of this, these tasks that require order, things to be done in a specific order, put everything back where it belongs, all of these things that are part of order, this is all part of mathematics later. That's what's really, really fascinating about it. So we are, as I said about 5 minutes ago, everything that we do matters. Every single thing that we do matters. And it may not seem important to pop something back where it belongs. And we're like it as adults, right? I'm always leaving things all over the house, but for young children, it's really, really important. So that's the amazing side, the incredible side. You're going to have a child who wants to keep things ordered, who puts things back where they belong, and who is very meticulous and very, very particular about setting out their clothes, for example, or making their bed. There's lots and lots of things that when you have a young child that's a really strong sense of order, it's really, really awesome, because it really, really helps you. And they will be the one who will be able to get ready for school on time, as it were. Because they know the sequence of order that things need to happen, and it's really important to them. They do those things in order and then are ready to go. And so what I want to tell you about now, after I've had a sip of water, is the other side of a strong sense of order, what that means, how that manifests, how it can be seen as a negative thing, particularly in toddlers, and how we can support it. So, hi our little place, hi everyone who's joining. A really strong sense of order in toddlers is really, really misunderstood, because, as I said, it can seem, hi Sophia, it can seem, that a child is spoiled or being bratty, or, I don't know, doesn't want to share, or the most intense behaviour we see around sense of order is, as I said, is its peak between 18 months and 2.5 years. And this is where a lot of physical behaviour can come in, what would be termed as aggressive behaviour, but isn't really. And let me explain why. So at the age of 2, there's lots of things going on. Obviously, our child has got a lot more autonomy. They are completely in control of their body. They are wanting to do lots of things. They want to climb and run and jump and all of these things. They also want to be super, super autonomous. And if they have a strong sense of order, what that means that they will be thrown off really easily by things being done in a different order. If there's a break in the rhythm or the routine, if and there's this I don't know, cliche example that goes around saying, oh, my child wanted the blue cup instead of the red cup, and they had a tantrum, and sort of it's almost like saying that the child's being, illogical and it's the child's fault. But actually what it is the sense of order. So a 2-year-old who is having a tantrum because they've been given the red cup instead of the blue cup, it's nothing to do with them being spoiled or bratty or entitled or any other labels on it. It is literally about their sense of order. And if they've had the red cup before, they're going to want the red cup again. It's not as simple as for us to think, oh, we'll just use a different cup. We would just use a different glass. But let me give you a really good example that I read online earlier on today. It's the disaster for a child in having the wrong coloured cup or the wrong type of plate or the wrong type of spoon for a toddler with a strong sense of order is the same as us leaving our house and knowing that we'd left our car in the driveway and the car not being there anymore. That sense of panic that we have, that sense of, oh my God, what happened? Not knowing what to do. That sense of not knowing whether to shout at someone or cry or call the police or whatever it might be. That sense of panic. That's what is a really, really good example. I love it. I'm going to use it a lot in the future. Of what it's like for a child with a really strong sense of order, where there's been a break in rhythm, where there's been a break in consistency or predictability. So it's serious stuff. They're not being a brat. They're not being illogical. It is completely logical in their world because they literally expected something. And what their expectation is now out of order. So that's why it seems such a disaster. It seems such a drama, and why there will be tantrums around it. And it's completely normal. It's a massive meltdown might ensue, and that's absolutely fine. It's completely normal. It's something we can handle as adults. We've got our own tools in handling that, but it's for us to know there's nothing wrong with our child. They're not being difficult, and what we can do is know that with time and maturity and more advanced language skills, that these type of situations do get easier and they do get better. It's not going to be like this forever, even though when you're in the thick of it, it does feel like it. I'd love to give you a really intense and really good example of how a sense of order can manifest in children, particularly in a community environment or a playgroup environment or in a playground or, a soft play, something like that. So if you have a 2-year-old with a very strong sense of order, whose language skills are not yet fully developed, so can't express themselves, if that 2-year-old is in, a toddler community or in the playground, or say that your child's at the playground and he or she has a very, very strong sense of order, and then another child picks up their toy, or another child picks up someone else's toy. That's an even better example. So one child might pick up someone else's toy that your child knows belongs to someone else. It could really very well be that your child with a strong sense of order, the 2-year-old with a really strong sense of order, might go over and push the child who's taken the toy, or hit them, or even bite them. And this is because the child with a strong sense of order sees that something isn't right, and he is not, or she is not able to saunter up to the child and say, excuse me, that toy belongs to Henry, for example. They're not able to do that. All they can see in their brain is that isn't right. That toy does not belong to them, it belongs to Henry. So they rush over, and they don't have the language to communication skills to express what they want to communicate. So the only way that they can communicate is through physical behaviour, like pushing, snatching it away, or often the biting is very, very common. The mouth is the main focus. in the early years, because of course they learn to feed, they're learning to express themselves, they're learning to vocalize. So it's completely natural that if a child is not able to express something because they don't have the language and they're feeling frustrated, it is normal that they would bite. It is not a sign of aggression in your child or anyone else's child. And it's really, really tough. And the reason I know so much about this subject, and the reason that sense of order is probably my favourite one, and one of my biggest learnings in parenting to understand, is because my son has a really, really strong sense of order. He was the child who just before his second birthday was biting. I didn't realise it was because of sense of order at the time. Well, I didn't realise in as much depth and as much understanding as I am now. I'm now in the toddler community, and I can see that sense of order, particularly in a community where lots of children are putting things back where they belong. Lots of children have got different things. They've all got their own water bottle and what have you. So many incidents occur where one child will pick up someone else's water bottle or go and help someone out, or one child will go and take someone else's work, and then a child with a really strong sense of order will feel the need to kind of rush in and correct what's going on, because it's their sense of order, because they're going, okay, this shouldn't be happening, so I need to correct it. Quite often this is how physical behaviour happens with toddlers. Combination of sense of order and lack of fully developed language skills. So that's what it can look like in a 2-year-old. In a 4-year-old, it can look like, in a 3-year-old, it can be a child being obsessive with laying out their clothes. And I mean obsessive where it's really cute initially, and then if the t-shirt isn't folded in exactly the right way, or if the shorts are 5 degrees out of what they should be at the right angle to the rest of the stool, it can be really, really, really disconcerting for a child, and it really, really throws them off balance. With both of my children, they had a really intense period of, Harry was a bit later, about 3.5 to 4. Olivia was around 2.5, where they had to pull their socks up, put their leggings on, pull their socks up, and then tuck their leggings into the socks all the way around. And if it wasn't completely smooth inside the sock, then there were so many meltdowns. It was really, really hard, and it was really, really hard to keep patience, because to me as an adult, it just doesn't make sense. It's not logical, but they wanted it to be completely smoothed out, and it was something that we would spend a lot of time on. So it was really, really a challenging time. That's what it can look like in a 3-year-old. And then in a 4-year-old or a 5-year-old, what it can look like is when you're playing a board game, and this happened recently, in our home, if they're playing a board game and a child has been shown how to play a board game in a certain way, if someone else comes in and wants to play the game but shows it in a different way, wants to play it in a different way to which they've been shown, then that can spell trouble, because the child who's been taught the original way with a strong sense of order. So for example, my example is that the children were playing a game that was for 2 players. Actually, Guess Who? If any of you remember Guess Who, I remember it when I was little. They were playing the game Guess Who, and they had been taught with 2 players. And then we had 2 friends over, and they were, hi everyone who's joining, and they wanted to make 2 teams, so there were 2 people on each team. And the child in question was absolutely beside himself, because he had been taught that it was 2 players and now 4 players were going to play, and he just couldn't get his head around it. He got really, really upset. And it was great because the children were older, and they managed to, older children are a lot more understanding, and they managed to kind of talk him through it and talk him out of it, and then he was fine in the end. But that is this, because he was like, well, I don't want to play. He was getting more and more upset. And that was just such an interesting moment, because I thought, oh my goodness, if we didn't understand what was going on, then that child would have been labelled as spoiled or bratty, or he didn't want to share, or why is he making such a fuss? Hi, Jenny. And this little light bulb moment of playing the game was like, oh my goodness, that is sense of order again. It's so intense for some children, and it can just seem like really illogical and really difficult behaviour. But it's really, really not. It's the child developing, and it's interesting because when they move into the second plane, this moves into a sense of justice, a sense of moral justice, and a sense of what's right and what's wrong. And so it's a really, really interesting window of opportunity that could become a character trait, a personality trait. It's really, really interesting for me, particularly with Harry. I mean, Olivia's passed quite, as it would for in the first plane, and once she turned 5, 6, she's not at all ordered now. She's not at all tidy. She's not at all ordered. She's always losing things, which is such a characteristic of the second plane child. But Harry is still very, very meticulous, and it'll be really interesting that as he gets older, as he matures, this is something that will stay with him, or is it just the intensity of the sense of order in the first plane? So I'm sure you're now asking and thinking to yourselves, that's great, but how do I support the child who has a really, really intense sense of order, who doesn't have any logic and doesn't have any reason? How do I support my child when they're having a meltdown, when they're having a tantrum? What can I actually do in real terms? What can I do on a daily basis that makes a difference? Let me take a sip and I'll let you know. Hi, Naila. Naila's just asked a really great question. Could the sense of order stay in an older child at 6 years old? Yes, definitely. I mean, my son's 5 and he still has a very strong sense of order. So I agree, it could continue. It's at its peak in the toddler ages, but if a child has that predisposition, yeah, it can stay. It looks different. So the example I gave of the board game is what it looks like in an older child. It's more that it seems that they're very, very rigid in the way that they want to do things, and if someone doesn't do it in the right way, then in the way that they perceive to be the right way, then they can get really, really upset. But it's as they get older, the things that they want to be ordered about are slightly different, but the foundation of there is its order. This isn't the right way. This isn't the way that I was taught, or the way that I've been shown, or it's done. So it has to be this way, or I can't continue with it. I don't want to play anymore. All of these things. And I don't know about you, but I find that, and that kind of language that goes around that, and that resistance around that, I find so, so triggering, and I find really, really hard to manage my own emotions in those situations, because it's just this thing rising inside of me. Like, I know that this is just your brain, but it's really, really frustrating when you're trying to move through your day, and there's this intensity that comes up. That sounds really, really rude, and it sounds really, really grabby and spoiled, doesn't it? And I really, really hear you. It can be a really, really tough stage. Hi, Sophia. Are you talking about, Sophia says with you on that, are you talking about being triggered by it, and how the rudeness is really, really hard to cope with that goes with it? Yeah, I'm finding that I'm really struggling with that at the moment, actually, from particularly my older child, from Olivia. Something I'm really trying to work with, and I don't think I'm managing every day. So the way that we can support the sense of order. So let me look at my notes and see where we are. Okay, so I mentioned it at the beginning, actually, a simple, ordered, accessible environment. Think of consistency, predictability, and rhythm. And as Naila said, if you've got an older child still with a really strong sense of order, then we've got to think about our CPR, our consistency, our predictability, our rhythm. Hi, Yasmina. It's really important things that I know that can set my children off in terms of sense of order. If they're up too late, obviously they're tired, but then things are being done in a different way. What we think might be a really, really good idea to change the bedtime routine, and I've done this before as well, like, oh, shall we have bath first, shall we have dinner first, and I sort of leave it to them and give them a choice because they're older and it doesn't really matter. But that doesn't work with me, with a child with a really strong sense of order. I've got to try and keep the bedtime rhythm more or less the same. If there are going to be changes, like my children had their first sleepover ever last night, I've got to talk through what's going to happen. We've got to talk through, and we've got to have agreement at all stages that they're happy that this is going to be different. This is going to be done in a different way. Because things like out of their normal rhythm, that can really throw a child off. I wouldn't recommend doing anything radical to a toddler that has change, who has a strong sense of order, because that can really, really upset them. So things like, I don't know, sleepovers, or kind of, things that are non-urgent, things that can be avoided. If your child's going through a tough time with sense of order, then it's best to try and keep the rhythm as smooth as possible, and as consistent as possible for that period of time. So how else we can support? Simple, ordered, accessible environment, consistency, predictability, and rhythm. And language, lots and lots of communication, lots and lots of language, lots and lots of explanation of what is happening, and lots of empathy. It's what I say is my magic phrase, one of my magic phrases with my children is, I can see this isn't working for you. What are your needs? What can we do differently? But that magic phrase of empathy, I can see this isn't working for you. It's really, really, really a magic phrase, because you're offering that validation. You're not able to fix it for them quite often, because they're not in that frame of mind. They're not in the problem-solving area of their brain, which is still growing anyway. They're in their amygdala, because they're all fired up, and they're in the reptilian part of their brain, and they're angry or frustrated or upset. So we can't do anything in those moments but then offer empathy. Say, this is really hard, or say it out loud what it is, call out what it is. This isn't how you wanted it to be, is it? Like, just those powerful words of validation. You wanted this to be different. You didn't want it to be like this. This isn't the way you wanted. All of those really, really powerful words. This isn't working for you. These are really, really powerful statements of validation that are going to just really help our child to feel seen and heard. It might not be the first time you say it. It might not be in the first meltdown. But if we can get this our consistent, beautiful rhythm of responding in this way, it's really, really going to help them. So language, explanation. If there are going to be changes in the rhythm, of course, life happens. There's going to need to be changes in the rhythm. It's a normal part of life. So we can talk through what's going to happen. We can acknowledge that it's going to be different. The day, hi Shiham, the day before. It's not going to, you don't need to say it weeks in advance, days in advance, and you don't want to anyway, because they're little and they don't understand the concept of time. But acknowledge, so tomorrow night we're going to be staying at someone else's house. We're going to have dinner here, and then you're going to get into your pajamas, and then you're going to be sleeping in a new bed for one night, and I'm going to be here, and I'm going to be right next door, or whatever it might be. But explaining in advance what's going to happen, that can really help a child with a strong sense of order. So think of that consistency, predictability, and routine, that we can really support our child with their sense of order. The main thing in the language is acknowledging what's happening, and so that you can support them. We're not going to be able to fix it because they are not in the logical part of their brain, and that's okay. We don't need to fix it, but we can just be with them while they're feeling whatever they're feeling. I had something else that was in my brain, and I can't remember what it was now. Oh yes, so for a child with a really strong sense of order, you can do things like, you can nurture this actually by putting photos up on the wall of their daily rhythm, of their daily routine, who they're going to see, what they're going to do. This is them waving goodbye when they go to nursery, for example. This is a picture of them eating their lunch at nursery, or whatever their rhythm might be. This is us going for a walk in the park. You can really support their sense of order by putting up the photos. Just 6-8 photos of the general routine. This is them waking up. You can use these also as reminders, these photos, for like brushing their teeth and brushing their hair and all of those things. But for a child with a strong sense of order, it really, really supports them to have these photos stuck on the wall. And as those of you who've been following me for a long time know, in my stories, I put on my stories, I still have photos for Olivia 5 and 7 of all the things that need to happen before they go to school, and this really supports Harry in his sense of order. He knows he can go through all of the photos. He points to each one every morning, checks it, and he's always ready on time as well. Long may it last, because of his sense of order. He knows he's done everything. He checks everything off on those photos, and he's ready at the front door. He's got his bag, he's got his water bottle, and he's ready to go for school. So that's how we can really support the sense of order. And if we're going to be going on a trip, we're going to be doing something different that's out of the normal routine, you can print off some photos and make a little book for them so you can show them where the change in the routine is going to be. We're going to go on holiday, we're going to stay in this hotel, we're going to go to your grandparents' house, this is what their garden looks like, this is what their car looks like, this is what their house looks like, whatever it might be, this is what their apartment looks like. We can really support changes in rhythm, in routine, by photos in advance and then letting the child know what's going to happen. And lots of communication, lots of repetition of what the changes are going to be, what they're going to be doing. Because every time we say something, it's building those neural pathways, and they will be listening. And a lot of the time, it feels that they're not responding or not taking it in, but it's all building. It's all happening inside. So I think that's everything. Does anyone else have any questions? The sense of order. Oh my goodness, I've talked for far too long. I'm so sorry. I was going to try and keep these really short, but never mind. So let's circle back to our main points from this evening. So there are 6 sensitive periods in Dr. Montessori's philosophy. These are based on universal human needs, and these are windows of learning opportunities, windows of opportunities that are really, really intense, where the child learns unconsciously, absorbs unconsciously from the environment and their experiences in the environment. Sense of order is the one we focused on this evening, and sense of order is that a child needs external order in their environment. It's not the same as an adult's tidiness. It's the child having things in a simple, ordered, accessible place, so that they can rely, so they've got consistency, predictability, and rhythm in their environment. And this external order leads to internal order, so logic, problem solving, and reasoning as they grow, as they mature. Sense of order can look like a 2-year-old rushing over to snatch a toy from a child's hand because they know it belongs to something else. It can look like a toddler in a toddler community rushing over and biting another child because they're touching someone else's work. It can look like a 3-year-old being so fastidious and meticulous in laying up their clothes, lying out all of their socks. It can look like a 4-year-old or a 5-year-old not wanting to play a board game and getting really angry and frustrated because there's more players on the team than when he was first taught how to play that board game. And the other side of this is that a child with a strong sense of order is one who will love to clean, love to clear up, love to line things up in lines. And all children young children have a tendency to do this specific stage of development, a schema where they want to line things up. But a child with a sense of order is really meticulous in this. They will want to fold the laundry. They will want to do housework, do household tasks with you. They are going to want to lay things out neatly. They're going to want to put things back where they belong. They're going to want to put the work back on the table. They're going to want to lay the table. They're going to want to empty the dishwasher. All of those things, those are all sense of order. So it can be a really, really intense period, but it's a really, really interesting period because it shows us so much that our child's brain at work, them needing to have things in a certain way. And it's an innate need because the reaction when things aren't as they think they should be is very, very intense. So it's really interesting for us to observe. We need lots of lovely language and communication to support our children during this stage, and we need lots and lots of empathy and validation when they are going through these times. So thank you so much for joining. I'm so sorry for being so long. It's been 45 minutes. This was sense of order. Next week, I think I'm going to do maybe freedom of movement, the second sensitive period, not the second sensitive period, the second in my series of sensitive periods. So I'll do movement. That's something I'm really, really passionate about, getting children out of any restriction and letting them be free and wild as they should be, and climbing up stairs when they're little, really tiny when they're just crawling. So that's what we're going to talk about next week. This is a 6-part series on the Montessori sensitive periods starting today, and our last one I believe will be Tuesday the 10th of May. This is a special, Ramadan Kareem to everyone who's observing Ramadan. This is a Ramadan special for 2022, and What else was I going to say? This will be on all of the normal channels, YouTube, Spotify and iTunes. And coming soon is a Montessori Mission book. We are weeks away from publishing that, so I can't wait to tell you all about it when that comes out. Oh, and the other thing I had to tell you is next week will be 2 years since I first started doing Top Tip Tuesday on Instagram Live. So we're going to do something special next week. We could do something fun for next, thanks Jenny, thanks for joining. We'll do something fun for next week, 2 years of Instagram Live. If you want to see any of the back catalogue of my Instagram Lives over the past 2 years, you can find those on Spotify, on iTunes and on YouTube. They're all catalogued there. Just look for Enriching Environments and you'll find everything on there. Thank you so much for joining me, and I will speak to you all soon. Send me a DM if you have any questions, if you'd like any more topics, if you have anything that you are pondering upon in your parenting journey or your journey as an educator. Don't hesitate to drop me a DM. I'll speak to you soon. Bye-bye.